I want to set the scene. You're in your supermarket car park and someone you've known for 15 years is loading their bags into the boot of their car, and she sees you and she does a little wave and then she says it. She says, "How are you?" And you say, "Oh, I'm good. I'm busy. You know how it is." And she laughs and you laugh and you both get in your cars and the whole exchange takes 11 seconds. And you drive home and you don't think about it again. Except, here's what I want you to notice. She didn't ask twice. Nobody asks twice anymore. And that's not because they don't love you. It's because you've been so consistently, convincingly fine for so long that they've actually filed you under sorted. You're the one who's coping. You're the one they tell their problems to. And somewhere along the line, you became the person other people come to when they're not okay, which means that there's now nowhere in your life where you get to be the one who isn't. You built that carefully over many years, and it worked so well that you're now trapped inside it. That's what I want to talk about today, not the burnout, the hiding of the burnout, because they're two different problems. And the second one is the one that keeps you stuck. So I ran a workshop a few years ago, one of those weekend things, and there was about 60 people at it. And at the end, when everyone was drifting out, there was one woman who stayed, and I remember her starting to stack the chairs. Not because I asked her to, not because anyone asked her to, but because that's what she does in a room. She finds the job. She was maybe 60 years old. She'd been a nurse for 30 odd years, and then her husband had got a diagnosis, and then her mother moved in. And while she was stacking those chairs, she said to me quite lightly, like almost as an aside, "I don't think a single person in my life actually knows how bad it is." And I said, "Well, how would they?" And she stopped, and I remember she had a chair in her hand, and she looked at me and she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, you've spent 30 years being the person who's fine. You've trained everyone around you beautifully with total consistency. You've given them years of evidence. So when they look at you and they see someone who's fine, they're not being careless. They're believing you. You're just very, very good at this." And I remember her putting the chair down and bursting into tears and crying. Now, why do we do this? Part of it's practical. You genuinely don't want to be a burden. There's already so much going on. Everyone's got their own things, and adding your stuff to the pile feels selfish. But underneath that, and I want you to sit with this one, there's something else. There's shame. Not shame about being tired, shame about not coping with something you feel you should be able to cope with. Because being the strong one, it's not just a role that you play. Somewhere along the way, it's become the answer to the question of who you are, and even more importantly, why you are worth having around. So if you're the strong one and you admit that you're drowning, it's not just inconvenient, it feels like a threat to the whole structure you spent your whole life building. So you perform. And here's the thing about performing, it's not free. Right? So there's this research that has been done on something called expressive suppression. This is the technical name for the thing you do at the school gate and at the family lunch and at the 11-second car park conversation. Deliberately keeping the outside face still while the inside stuff is going on. And what this work consistently finds is that suppression doesn't turn the feeling down. So their physiological arousal stays up, and in some cases it goes even higher. So your body's still running the whole event, you've just muted the speakers. Now there's a second finding in that research that I find even more important. Suppression doesn't only cost you, it costs the connection. So people interacting with someone who's suppressing, they end up reporting that they feel less close to them. They can't say why, they just come away with less. So the performance you're doing to protect your relationship is actually damaging your relationship. It's kind of thinning it out. So I want you to think about what that means in real terms, because it's easy to hear that as an abstraction. It means the dinner where you were witty and warm and you left feeling emptier than when you arrived. Well, now we know why, right? Or it means the phone call with your sister where you covered everything except the one thing. There it is. It means that you're surrounded by people who care about you enormously, but you end up going to bed feeling like nobody knows you. It's not paranoia, it's not ingratitude. It's an accurate reading of what's happening, and you built it one reasonable, considerate, protective decision at a time. And the tiredness of it, that's the part people underestimate. So holding a face still is work. Deciding in a fraction of a second which version of the last month you're going to hand someone, that's work. Keeping track of what you've told which person so the story stays consistent, that's work. So you're doing a full-time job that appears nowhere on any list of jobs, on top of everything else you're carrying. And then you wonder why you're so exhausted, by maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then there's this, which I love. There's a study by Anna Burke and her colleagues. It was published around 2018 that gave the phenomenon a name I think about all the time because it's such a brilliant name. The beautiful mess effect. So what they found was that when people imagine showing vulnerability themselves, they rate it as weakness, messy, exposing. But when they see someone else do exactly the same thing, they rate it as courage, as strength, as something that draws them closer to that person. Same behavior. But there's a completely different verdict depending on what side of it you're standing on. Which means the thing you're most afraid of, that people will see you struggling and think less of you, is almost certainly not what's happening in their heads. It's what's happening in yours. So you're running a story about how you'll be received, and the research says that story is wrong in a really predictable, well-documented direction. So let's name the actual mechanics of this. Hiding your burnout doesn't protect anyone. It isolates you. And isolation isn't a side effect of burnout. It's an accelerant. So the load stays exactly the same, and now you're carrying it in a room by yourself with the door shut. So you're not being strong. You're being alone in a costume. And I want to say something about the fear underneath, because I don't think it's really the fear of being judged. I think it's the fear that if you put it down, even for a second, you won't be able to pick that mask back up again. That the whole thing will come out at once and there'll be no bottom to it and you'll never get back to functioning. So you don't open the door even a crack because you don't trust what's behind it. Now that fear, that's completely understandable, but it's important to also know that it's not how it works. So feelings that get spoken, they tend to move. It's the ones that stay sealed that keep all that pressure that we all know. You're not sitting on a bottomless well. You're sitting on years of unspoken things, and those things have ends. And I say that with enormous affection because I understand why this mask exists. It gets you through. Probably got other people through too. It just isn't a thing you can wear indefinitely without it starting to wear you out. So here's your experiment, and I'm going to make it small because I know exactly how you feel about the idea of some big vulnerable conversation. And you're not doing that, and neither would I. One person, one sentence, 1 degree more true. That's it. This week, pick one person. not the person who needs the most from you, not the most difficult relationship, but just someone who's reasonably safe. And the next time they ask how you are, instead of the automatic, I'm good, I'm busy, you know how it is, give them 1 degree more truth. Actually, I'm pretty depleted at the moment. Or honestly, this year has been heavier than I've let on. 1 sentence. And then, this is the hard part, stop talking. I want you not to explain it. I don't want you to soften it. I don't immediately want you to reassure them that you're fine, really. I don't want you to pivot to asking about them, which you will absolutely want to do about 2 seconds in. Just let the sentence sit there in the air and see what happens. Notice what your body does in that silence. That's the whole experiment. You're not solving anything. You're just finding out whether the thing you've been afraid of actually happens. I'll tell you what actually happens. They lean in, and often, quite often, they say, me too. So if today landed somewhere, here's a great next step. Curious where your happiness baseline really sits right now? Take the free quiz in the description. Okay, you've been the strong one for a very long time. Long enough that the people who love you have forgotten on some level you're also a person. See if you can let one of them remember. As always, be kind, take care, go gently in the world.